I'm Nigel Slater. Being a good cook isn't about mastering difficult recipes. Sometimes the simplest combinations are the best. That's what this series is all about. Think soft and crisp, surf and turf, or sugar and spice. So this is how I like my ribs. Very sweet and very spicy. I'll be reinventing some of my favourite recipes and trying out some new ones too. It's crisp and it's fresh and it's hot and it's cold and there's all sorts of things going on, all of which I love. And once you understand how ingredients work together, I hope you'll be inspired. It's truly, truly gorgeous. Today it's all about combinations made by Mother Nature. Flavours that belong together. They were born and bred to be on a plate at the same time. Whether it's ingredients that share the landscape or which are at their best at the same time of year, what grows together goes together. So I want to explore born and bred at home in the kitchen and down on the farm. A wonderful piece of meat. Ingredients tend to end up in recipes for different reasons. Sometimes it's because they come from the same part of the world, maybe. So peppers, tomatoes, things that grow in the same space, they share the same soil. It's like they were always meant to share a pot or a pan. Today, I'm making a gorgeous supper dish inspired by Mediterranean flavours. I'm going to roast some peppers and tomatoes and transform a simple plate of pasta. I'm using long, sweet peppers. Take a slice off the side, so they'll end up like little boats that will catch the juices as they roast. Next, some small tomatoes. I do like inventive cooking, the idea of exploring new tastes and new flavours. But if something works, then I'm going to make the most of it. Alongside the tomatoes, chop up some leftover bits of pepper and add them too. And I have to have garlic. The peppers and tomatoes get a thorough coating in olive oil. I want them to soften as they cook, but I also want the edges to be scorched and sweet. So that gets some salt. Season well and put into a hot oven. This dish is all about the Mediterranean flavours of peppers and tomatoes, so I want the herb that's born to go with them, and that's basil. I'm making a quick and easy dressing, just basil, salt and olive oil. You just smell that basil filling the kitchen. And I'm being, I know, a little devil-may-care about where the basil dressing ends up. And it doesn't matter that it's going in the roasting tin. In fact, it's actually all to the good. I'm going to be serving the roasted Mediterranean vegetables with pasta. I'm going to put quite a bit of salt in there. There's some very clever people about. Somebody worked out that you can make pasta with little dips in it that will hold the sauce. Just brilliant. These are orecchietti. You could use any pasta with hollows, twists or curves, which will catch the basil dressing. The peppers are really soft and luscious. They smell of basil and tomato and garlic. When the peppers and tomatoes are soft and just catching around the edges, put them to one side. Now in the roasting tin, I've got olive oil, I've got garlic, I've got a little bit of basil, and I'm not going to waste a tiny drop of that. And all the wonderful sweet, sour, sugary bits from the peppers that have stuck onto the pan will all come off into the pasta and flavour it. Just a few more leaves of basil. Flavours that belong together. They were born and bred to be on a plate at the same time. There they are. Peppers, tomatoes, basil and olive oil, and a little bit of pasta. It's just a perfect, perfect unity. These roasted tomatoes and peppers would make a lovely light lunch on their own, but add them to a plate of pasta and they make something so simple, yet so delicious. One of the things I love about my garden is picking the ripe fruit and veg. If nature's delivering things at the same time, we should take the hint. At the moment, two very different fruits are ready to eat: heavy, juicy figs and tart, sweet blackberries. It's not a traditional combination, but as they've ripened to perfection at the same time, I think they'll make a perfect pairing for a pie too. I'm going to start by making the sweet short crust pastry. I use a little bit more than half butter to flour. That's because I want it to be really crumbly, and the more butter you put into that flour, the more soft and crumbly your pastry will be. And you know you can do this in a food processor in seconds. Press the button and you've got pastry. But on a sort of rainy afternoon, I like to make it myself. For the best results, it's important that everything's really cold. Fridge cold butter and really cool hands. In fact, if it's a hot day, I'll just run my hands under the cold tap before I start, so that the butter doesn't melt when I'm trying to rub it into the flour. When the flour and butter feel like coarse breadcrumbs, add the sugar. I'm using icing sugar. To make it extra rich, use a couple of egg yolks. A little water will bring it all together. You know, this is my idea of heaven, is baking on a rainy afternoon. One of those wonderful warm kitchen moments. Knead the pastry briefly and gently, and then put it to rest in the fridge. And it's really important, because if you don't, it will shrink. And when you take it out of the oven, you'll end up with pastry that's come away from the sides of the tin. Now for the filling. I've picked these figs at just the right moment. They're so ripe and juicy, and they don't need peeling. I'm going to add some red currant jelly. Any fruit jam would do, and just warmed until it's runny. Next, the blackberries. There's something so lovely about putting perfectly ripe fruits into the same dish. To bring everything together, I'm adding some ground almonds. And that is my pie filling. Once the pastry's had a good 20 minutes in the fridge, it's time to put the pie together. Now, I could roll this pastry out, but when it's very high in butter, it's very fragile. It's sometimes easier not to actually roll it out, but to just cut very fine discs of pastry and simply lay them round the tart tin, and then just push them into shape with your fingers. You know, you can spend hours making pastry work look like something you'd buy from a shop, something incredibly professional and perfect. But you know what? I like anything made of pastry to look a little bit wobbly and homemade. It's got a charm to it. It actually makes me want to eat it. Dot leftover pastry here and there. Any gaps will let the steam out. It's quite a deep pie, so it'll need a good hour in the oven. There are times for a piece of perfectly formed French patisserie, and there's time for pie. The only way I can improve that is with just a trickle of cream. I don't care if it's a novel combination. Figs and blackberries were born to go together, and the proof is in the pudding. Taste of blackberries from the hedge and the figs from the tree. It's incredibly juicy and the pastry is really soft. If you think that pastry is a bit daunting, this easy method could be just what you're after. Try matching any fruit that ripens at the same time and just let your imagination run free. My search for the best that Mother Nature has to offer has brought me to a farm in Devon.
I've been farming Dartmoor for generations, just goes back and back and back. What we always have and probably what we always will do.
It's just a great Dartmoor farm, you know. Pretty bleak in the winter, but it's great in the summer, and the stock love it.
Brothers Matt and Neil Cole raise cattle and sheep that are born and bred on Dartmoor. Meat isn't just meat. Where it comes from can make all the difference to the flavour. And it's the grass these animals eat that makes their meat taste unique.
The land up here is very high. Well, the main farm's on about 1,450 feet, which means we get short summers, very long winters. Hence, the pasture land is quite poor, so we need traditional hardy breeds like Galloway. Because they're tough, they can utilise the moorland grasses and herbage, which gives them that unique flavour and taste.
The taste that you get, it's sort of, you know, retained that piece of Dartmoor within its flavour.
Neil and Matt have invited me to one of their farmyard barbecues.
Rumps on first. We'll put some minute steaks on as well, because these will be a bit quicker.
So that I can really taste the flavour of the meat, it's going straight on the grill as it is.
Because the traditional old-fashioned English breeds will put on fat in the summer to get that marbling effect, which helps keep them through the winter. But that's when we cook it, it comes out in the meat, and that will sizzle when it goes on the barbecue, and that's the fat coming out of the meat and helping baste the meat, which makes it very tender and juicy.
Oh, look at that!
That's lovely, isn't it?
Look at that!
And you get the flavour from the fat, but at the end of it, you won't get any fat. You get the meat, which is a lot juicier and tastier. You got another plate? We'll take these off.
They've got two cuts on the go. There are the thick rump steaks. I'm starting with a thin minute steak.
I'm going to go and try a slice of that, Nige.
Isn't that juicy?
Lovely.
Isn't that juicy? Next, the rump. Such a good colour, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, it's beautiful. You go to the supermarket and it's that real bright red, and you think, well, that's not as it should be. It should be that dark, you know, that dark flavoursome colour. It's lovely.
Well, if you let the meat hang for 2 or 3 weeks in a chiller, as it should be and as it always used to be done, the meat will become more tasty, and that's what gives it a slightly darker look.
Which, of course, will put the price up a little bit. You've got to be prepared to pay a bit more for it.
Cost, yeah.
Look at that. Wow. That must be nearly ready.
Plate.
I've always got a plate.
Always got a plate.
Now, I would let that sit for a couple of minutes to relax before I cut into it. Would you?
Yes, as long as my family's not here, because normally
They're in.
they would be, they would be grabbing it. Oh, look out! Here they come.
Oh, it looks nice anyway.
This was mine. Yes, I thought that was going to disappear. Let me get some knives and forks.
Looks lovely on a plate, that is.
So much flavour there.
They say the key to most barbecues is the sauce, but we don't believe in sauces.
No.
We don't need them.
You don't need them. A wonderful piece of meat.
Glad you enjoy it.
Fabulous. This is my kind of cooking. When something's this good, you just don't need a recipe. There's all sorts of reasons why ingredients work together. Sometimes it's because they evoke a certain time of year. And with anything to do with mushrooms, it always makes me think of autumn. Earthy mushrooms always remind me of long walks in the woods which is why I think they're perfect stuffed with that other woodland offering, chestnuts. I start by preparing the mushrooms. I put a little butter in each cup and give them a good trickle of olive oil. Then some salt and pepper. You just want as much flavour in there as you possibly can, because it should be delicious and not just a case to carry the stuffing. And I want herbs. Thyme works particularly well with mushrooms. I want these to be really, really juicy. So as well as the butter, I'm going to put in a little bit of Madeira. Any warming fortified wine will do. Sherry, Marsala or port. They all work with mushrooms. They soak up everything you throw at them, so you might as well throw something utterly delicious at them. And then they go in a good hot oven for about 15-20 minutes. Next, the stuffing. Finely chop a couple of small onions and fry them gently in some butter. I'm going to leave those with an occasional stir until they're really soft and golden. Juicy baked mushrooms are incredibly versatile. You can stuff them with spinach, couscous or cheese for a light vegetarian supper. But today, I'm making a hearty filling with sausage meat. Now, I can never find tasty sausage meat by the pound, so I tend to buy my butcher's breakfast sausages and just take the skins off. It takes seconds, and I end up with sausage meat that I know is really delicious. When the onions are soft and golden, add woody herbs like thyme and rosemary. The mushrooms have had 20 minutes in the oven. And already they're really juicy, and you can smell the Madeira, you can smell the thyme, you can smell the mushrooms. Now put the stuffing together. Break up the sausage meat, and then add some breadcrumbs. What's really going to make the mushrooms sing is chestnuts. You can get them fresh in the autumn, but the easy option is to use canned. It's that thing of mushrooms and chestnuts, the sort of thing that you find together in the autumn. They're around at the same time of year. And this evokes those sort of darker evenings when the weather's getting a little bit cooler. And there's that sort of mellow, almost mushroomy smell in the air. And that's what this dish brings to mind. Now, if there's too much stuffing, I just make up some little balls of stuffing and pop them into the pan so that some lucky person can have a little extra bit of baked stuffing. And that's all there is to it. I pop them back in the oven for about an hour. And they smell utterly wonderful. And in the pan, some of the little bits of spare stuffing and the odd chestnut has toasted really nicely too. I wouldn't normally use the word scrumptious, but it is. It's the best word to describe that. It's sausagey and it's chestnutty and it's mushroomy. It's all the flavours of the season. A simple stuffed mushroom can make a stunning supper. Matching its dark flavours with its woodland partner, the chestnut, brings out the best of both. Ingredients that were just meant to be together. I'm in Devon visiting a farm which produces the most outstanding meat. Now I'm searching for some locally grown vegetables to go with it, in a hearty winter salad with cold roast beef. And Neil and Matt are two hungry farmers, so this dish had better be quick. I'm actually just going to knock up a little dressing first. Grain mustard, white wine vinegar, olive oil and a pinch of salt, all mixed together. Nobody uses swede anymore. It's one of those veggies that I'm kind of quite fond of. I'm actually going to grate this, have it raw.
When it's fresh out of the ground, and you skin it with your pocket knife, have a bit then, and it is cracking.
It's incredibly sweet. You know, it almost tastes like an apple. It's so sweet. Then I add some roughly shredded cabbage. So I'm going to put a bit of grated beetroot in. Not a lot. Just put a little bit of that in. And I'm going to pop in some of these. I've got a tiny bit of raw kale.
Yeah, those middle bits you got there are tip-top.
This is a take on the classic crunchy coleslaw. You could try any combination of winter veg. Carrot or celeriac would also have been good. Isn't that beautiful?
Didn't ought to just try it before you put it on there, just to make sure it's okay?
I think we should, don't you?
Oh, I think so. Top on.
I think so.
Oh, a bit tight with your portions, but it'll be right.
Yes, I've met your portions down here.
Well, that's enough for me, anyway.
Is it?
I don't know what you lot are eating.
Oh, I'm sorry, I've got to do this. I couldn't resist them. They love nasturtiums.
You can eat flowers, can you?
Yeah. And they're peppery. And lovely beef salad.
Can you knock up 2 of them?
This was just for me, actually.
Thank you. Yeah. Oh, go on. Yeah, it is. Tip-top.
Really
Juicy.
sweet, isn't it? Yeah.
You have to excuse me, but I've got to have another one. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not quite as good at serving it as you, but it'll all go down the same way.
Exactly. It's an extraordinary thing of eating something that is so close to the landscape.
Yeah.
And it just feels right somehow. I was inspired to make this fabulous beef salad by the ingredients found right here on these moors. And if it's inspired you to get creative too, you'll find lots more ideas if you go to the website. My garden is the greatest inspiration. Even at the end of the season, when the best of the harvest is over, a closer look reveals hidden treasure. Oh, look. Lovely. Don't be scared of mixing any vegetables. They really will all just work together. This recipe doesn't have a set list of ingredients. It's about taking whatever I can lay my hands on and simply transforming them into a delicious supper. I've got chard with its rainbow stalks, the last of the courgettes, which has grown bigger than I normally like, and these courgette flowers, which have blossomed too late to grow. These tomatoes aren't going to ripen now. I can either make green tomato chutney, which will thrill all my friends, or I can actually cook them as green tomatoes. I've also collected the last of the summer's basil, and I'll pick a little thyme, oregano, and chives. Anything with a very tender leaf isn't going to last through the cold weather, so you might as well pick it now. And just maybe the odd little herb flower that's left. Well, I've got supper. I could make a stew, but I want to see if I can keep the various flavours distinct and fresh. I'm going to start by steaming some of them. It's always a help when you steam anything to keep it roughly the same size, so it all cooks at the same time. And I've got some chard, and the leaves are very tender. The stalks just need that little bit longer cooking, so I'm going to steam these. A few thyme and oregano leaves, and I'll leave the vegetables to steam for 10 minutes. There's a courgette that has seen better days. I try to pick them when they're really small, but they hide under the leaves. It doesn't mean they can go to waste. The secret is to fry them slowly in olive oil and butter. Any veg that looks as if it's going to be tough, give it time. Nothing will come from trying to quickly cook a vegetable that's past its best. Add a few basil leaves and sprigs of thyme. And a couple more little bits of treasure. Some courgette flowers. You don't need them. I just don't want to waste them. Next, slice the green tomatoes and add them to the pan. Now these steamed vegetables have been on for about 10 minutes or so, and they're looking very tender to me. Yeah, see the knife just goes straight in, so they're done. I need a sauce to bring everything together. So melt some butter with some creme fraiche. And those last few little herbs that I've got, the little leaves of thyme. And finally, the shredded chard leaves go in. And then the steamed vegetables. I'm not going to waste these little herb flowers. Everything I found in the gardens made it to the dish. It could be the ultimate test of Bourne and bread. Something else to bring the flavours out, just something, just a tiny bit of lemon. Just a few drops. And you could have put maybe a bit of garlic in there, a little bit of chopped chilli. I was tempted, but I want them to taste of themselves. This is a celebration of my kitchen garden and all the wonderful things I've grown in it the last year. You'd never guess that that was a bit of a desperate supper. A last-minute tank round the garden to see what was left. And it tastes good. Like so many things I make, this dish was inspired by what I had in front of me. With just a little thought, I made what was left over in the garden into a sensational supper. Bourne and bread, ingredients that are naturally meant to be together. Because they're familiar combinations doesn't mean they can't be exciting and fresh. Just let the flavours inspire you. Next time, I'm going to be exploring the importance of hot and cold. Think sizzling lamb with a trickle of yoghurt, or blistering caramelised apples with homemade ice cream. It's very hot. It's chillingly cold all at once. It's everything I want a mouthful of food to be.